Jason, it wouldn't work.
Keep an eye on that thing.
How you doing?
I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's 6:01, I think. Everyone, let's see. Call the roll. Call the order. We got to establish a quorum. Director Palmer, Director Schott, Director Bland, Director Robinson, Director Ward, Director Gaines, and Director Menley are all present. We got to have a full board. Everyone, please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any public comments?
Is our recording going?
Yeah, no, it's back there.
Yeah, it's back here. Bonnie's taking care of
Is
that.
there anybody for
Bonnie,
Bonnie.
do you have anybody sign up for public comment?
Do what?
Have we had anybody sign up for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Discussion possible action, moving on. Discussion possible action, approval of minutes, July 2025 regular meeting and the August 12th special meeting.
separate? All together.
It's your pleasure, Director. I would say we'll probably do them separately.
All right. So for the first one, for Tuesday, August the 20, no, today, August the 12th minutes. There's nobody else that has any questions or anything.
Well, your first one will be July 9th.
Oh, no. See anything wrong with that one. If anybody doesn't see any problems, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of July the 9th.
Director Bland is motion to approve the minutes from July 9th.
Second.
Director Palmer seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Make the second motion to accept the August 12th minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the August 12th, 2025 special meeting minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. General Manager's report.
Okay, since the last board meeting, we only had one application for an exempt well in down off of 277. The gentleman drilled several times through the years. Hit a couple of ones, 2 to 3 gallons a minute. He's hoping can get at least 3 gallons a minute on this one. So not a whole lot of water down in that area. The meetings past and upcoming. Week before last was the Region J meeting in Kerrville, which I attended. The following day was the GMA 7 meeting in Sonora. Also attended that. The GMA 7 President Robinson also attended that. The following week was the Groundwater Annual Summit in San Antonio. It was Tuesday through Thursday. Started Tuesday morning early and ran through Thursday. They had some very good speakers and breakout sessions, and they announced it's probably the largest attendance that they had had since they started with the summit. And, most of it was very interesting, and as well as the breakout sessions. Um, next, let's see, September the 8th, uh, Monday week, the GMA 10 will be having their meeting in San Antonio. And then on the legislative update,
What, now GMA 10, that one got canceled.
it got canceled. It was
And
supposed to be the day before the tag started,
when did they reschedule that one for?
September the 8th. And it meets at the GAA building there in San Antonio. It's either 11 or 11:30.
Swing that one around.
And then on the legislative update, Mr. Ellis, if you would give us a report.
Well, it's been a fun summer. I can tell you. Several groundwater bills were filed during the first special session. That all came to naught when the Democrats took off and broke quorum. A couple of those have been combined into a single bill, and a couple of them have been dropped and have been refiled during the second special session. The only one that the governor has opened the call to so far is a local bill specific to the Natchez and Trinity Valley's groundwater conservation district. And it essentially prohibits that district from issuing any new permits for export of water outside the district for a period of 2 years. And so we basically creates that moratorium on issuing those new permits, requires TWDB and the district to work together on studying the available supplies, and for the first time ever have suggested we need to have something called a sustainable yield and determine what the sustainable yield of the aquifer is, which is the amount that can be withdrawn in perpetuity. So we'll see if that has been filed, added to the call, heard in committee, voted out of committee, placed on the House agenda, voted out of the House, and is now waiting in the Senate. The same bill has been filed in the Senate, has not yet received a committee hearing or anything, but that's not unusual. Not really necessarily mean anything. They have 2 weeks roughly left for the Senate to take action on that and send it to the governor, and for the governor to sign it if he will. The fact that he opened up the call tells me he'd be more amenable to signing the bill if it passes. That came about because in Anderson, and Houston counties, a large landowner that owns more than 7,000 acres of land up there and has a bunch of money he made during the 2008 mortgage debacle, wanted to put in 45 wells that would be capable of producing over 50,000 acre feet of water that he could then take and sell to somebody someplace someday. Probably Dallas, maybe Austin. Hell, he could ship it away to El Paso if they're willing to pay for the pipeline. So that got everybody in East Texas in a huge uproar. The aquifer, that part of the Carrizo-Wilcox, has already been in decline for multiple years. They had over 7,000 people filed comments and protests against the permits. One of those counties happens to be in Chairman Cody Harris's district, so they're picking on the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee. That was not a great move. He called a hearing back in July to hear a bunch of testimony about this whole project, and he made Mr. Bass, Kyle Bass, the owner, and his attorney, Ed McCarthy, sit there for 11 hours while he heard from everybody else. Until you finally heard from those two. They were next to last on the hearing list, and Mr. Bass has kind of said really terrible things about our state water plan, that it's all garbage, and that there's going to be much more demand than the water plan accounts for, and he wants to jump in and make money off of that demand. He's trying to help everybody by meeting that demand. And then after the governor opened the call, he did I guess it was a tweet or something, some social media post, where he called Cody Harris a small-time politician, and that he would see him in federal court. So Cody opened up his hearing on his bill, reading that tweet to the entire group, and going in, he had at least one no vote against his bill, But after that person heard this, they said, I heard that and I changed my vote. I'm voting for your bill.
Well,
So there you have that. We'll see what happens with that. I'm sure there'll be a lawsuit over it. We'll see what, this isn't even the district stepping out and doing this. This is the legislature telling the district they cannot issue these permits. So the district's going to have to follow that statute if it becomes a statute.
What bill is that, Greg?
House Bill 27.
27.
So for your interest, because that is a purely local bill, there were several that were filed that would be statewide. None of those have passed. One of which would have repealed the rule of capture, meaning anybody who is pumping more than 25,000 gallons a day could be sued for causing damages to their neighbors. As an attorney, I say, bring it on. As an attorney that only represents groundwater conservation districts, I think you should be the preferred method for handling these situations, and we ought to deal with these administratively, and rather than trying to deal with them in the courts. I can't imagine putting on in front of a jury of 6 or 12 people all the hydrogeology of what's happening in the aquifer, and who's pumping affected who, and how much, and what the damages are. I think it just would be a nightmare. But at the Groundwater Summit, we heard from Chief Justice Nathan Hecht, former Chief Justice Nathan Hecht of the Texas Supreme Court, and I had the opportunity to ask him a question. And so I asked him, it sounds, because he talked about the East case from over 100 years ago, 1904. He talked about the Cipriano case from 1997. He talked about the Day case from 2012, and a little bit about the Bragg case, which came after that. And I asked him the question. I said, it sounds like what you're saying is the rule of capture means I can't sue my neighbor for damaging my well with what they're pumping out of their well, but I can sue the district that gave him the permit that allowed him to do that. And Chief Justice Hecht said, yeah, that's pretty much the case. So that's a terrible answer. I think he's right, but I think it's a terrible situation. I don't think I mean, at that point, why have districts? If all we're going to do is be sued all the time and taking tax dollars and paying off people for their wells going down or whatever, I'm not sure that that's a good reason to have groundwater conservation districts. And the same thing happens, of course, if we deny the permits. If you say no to the permit, you're going to get sued for takings on that as well. So you're really walking a razor thin line here, trying to figure out what's the best thing to do as a board. Back on the legislation, the things that are going to affect you, there's several different property tax bills that are moving right now. A couple are moving. The Senate's already passed one that is requiring you all to have the tax authorization election, or the above no new tax election. If you're trying to adopt a tax rate above that, and it's lowering the limits for certain the large communities. And it's weird because it's any political subdivision that's in a county that has more than 75,000 people. And that doesn't affect here. I mean, that takes that 1.03% increase to 1.025. It leaves the one for the small taxing units, which is what you all are, at 1.08. So you can do 1.08 times the revenue you had last time and still be with adjustments. There's other adjustments that have to be made. That keeps you out of trouble with having an election again.
We're still at 3 and 8% then.
Right. So, but that could change at any time. There are several bills out there that completely do away with the small taxing units. Those you'd be stuck at the 1.03, and there are several bills out there that require that no new tax election to be passed by 2/3 of the voters or 60% of the voters. So they're really trying to clamp down on property taxes.
Is it still? I know the way that it used to be, but I'm not sure if it's still this way. It used to be you had to have one hearing. If you went up to 3%, you could have one hearing. You go up to 8, you had to have 2. If you exceeded 8, then you were subject to rollback. Is that still the way it is?
As a small taxing unit, you can propose an increase up to 8% above the last revenue and not have to hold an election. If you go over that, then you have to hold an election.
So it's not even subject to rollback anymore. They're making it automatic. You have to have an election.
I believe that's the case, yes.
Interesting.
So for the other taxing units that are not small taxing units, they're limited to the 3%. And I'm fairly certain that, again, that's not really the area that I pay attention to. When we have property tax questions, I find somebody else knows a lot more about it than I do. But I do try and follow what the legislation's doing. If it goes over the 3% for the regular taxing units, the non-small taxing units, that's an automatic election after that. Of course, it's a majority vote. And there's another bill that requires all those elections to happen in November, which is kind of interesting because you're setting your tax rate in September, and the ballots are usually printed in October because they have to have early voting. So, how you can get the protest in time to get that on the ballot for November, I don't know. It's one of the funny things that happened is that when the Senate bill, which sets that 75,000 population, which means that every MUD in Harris County is now stuck with that same rule because they're in a county of more than 75,000 people. The MUD doesn't have 75,000, not anywhere near it. But because they're in a county of 75,000, they have to live by the same rules. And when they came up on the House floor, there was one amendment that stripped that 75,000 limit out. They just got rid of it. There's going to be one number for a regular taxing unit, another number for the small taxing units. There was a later amendment that amended the 75,000 section without changing that 75,000 number. So now those two amendments conflict. He amended the section that had been removed earlier, which kind of puts that section back, but doesn't put any of the other sections back that said 75,000. And that's how it passed the House. They tried to do a fixing amendment on third reading. That requires a 2/3 votes, and they fell one vote short. So that's now gone back to the Senate. The Senate's not going to concur in the House amendments, and they're going to have to go to conference committee and try and work that out in conference. And we'll see what they come up with. But that bill's almost certainly going to pass and get to the governor's desk. I'm not even sure what it says right now, let alone what it's going to say when it comes out of conference. The last thing is that the lobbying rules are changing. There's a bill that's already passed the Senate. It says that the political subdivisions may not use public funds, which includes both tax dollars and fee money, would limit you to using donations, like to get so many donations. You may not use any public funds to hire a person who's required to register as a lobbyist. A person is required to register as a lobbyist when they receive compensation for trying to influence legislation, meaning you all pay me to go up and keep track of what's going on and occasionally testify or go talk to members' offices and try and influence legislation. So I register as a lobbyist. You would no longer be allowed to pay that contract, meaning I would no longer be able to go up there to influence legislation. I can still track it. I can still tell you what's going on, but it would be up to you to go talk to the members. What I don't know, and not sure I'm willing to risk, is what happens if I go talk to members or go to testify on my own behalf, not on behalf of any of my clients. I'm not getting compensated for doing that, so technically I'm not a lobbyist, but I do represent, work for. There was another bill that hasn't moved that says that you can't spend any public funds to hire anybody who's regarded to register as a lobbyist, period. So if I have to register as a lobbyist for another client, you couldn't hire me to be your general counsel. So then that bill hasn't moved yet. So I don't think it's going to. And we'll see. That bill has none of those bills have even been set for hearing in the House. The bill's already passed the Senate. None of them have been heard in the House. There's roughly 2 weeks left in the session. And of the governor's priorities, he had at least a dozen issues he wanted them to look at. Really, only property taxes moved. I expect the flood control will move next, because obviously we had the big issues with that north of here, and the rest of it we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what happens. So I'll be happy to answer questions about the legislation. I'm sorry that took so long.
Greg, I just got a quick question going back to that, talking about Heck and Cipriano, Chief
Yep.
Justice.
Yep.
he said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you gotta be careful with the words here, but he basically said he would have gone the other way if he, had it to do again. So my question to you is, how long do you think it's gonna be till somebody presses the test what the Supreme Court might do in a case like that?
I don't know. I mean, what the comment was that if he could have decided Cipriano differently, he probably would have voted the other way. Meaning he would have voted to get rid of the rule of capture and change to some other system. The only other systems available are really the American rule of reasonable use, which honestly, that's followed in most of the eastern part of the United States. And reasonableness can mean anything from not having any unreasonable offsite impacts of when you're pumping to you're putting all of the water to a reasonable use, which everybody does. There's not, that's basically a no wasting of rule. There's the second one is correlative right, which Texas law is kind of messed up because he's talking about correlative rights in oil and gas, and that doesn't mean what they're saying it means at all. There's a corresponding right in oil and gas to drill an offset well when somebody else is pumping and lowering the field beneath your property. So you have the right to go, capture as much as they're capturing to offset what they're pumping. And that's been dealt with administratively through the Rail Commission by doing things like unitization and everybody over the field gets a check, right? How that's not eminent domain, I don't know, but that's how they handle it. I'm going to take your oil and gas, but I'll pay you a check, so I guess it's okay. The correlative right means you get to pump an amount based on the amount of land that you own. Well, that's great. What the district in the state that comes closest to doing exactly that probably is the Guadalupe County Groundwater Conservation District. They measure the thickness of the aquifer and the amount of land you own over that, and that defines what your pumping right is. And they don't, I can't remember, their DFC allows a certain amount of drawdown over time, but not very, it's like 10 feet or something, I can't remember. So the problem with that is utilities or large farmers, like rice farmers, pump a lot more than that. And they have invested in land and wells and treatment plants and distribution lines and all kinds of money to be able to utilize that water, but they don't own enough land to justify the amount of water they're pumping. In a takings case, that in those investment backed expectations carry a lot of weight. When we tell a utility you can't pump that water anymore, there's a possibility they'll sue us for a takings and say you've taken away my ability to recover my investment in all this infrastructure. So those with historic use have the best chance of recovering in a takings claim. So the correlative rights don't address that unless you give utilities an amount equal to their service area. But then you have to adjust that for anybody that drills a well within the service area, because otherwise you're giving the utility that person's water, which I don't think you can do that either. You can't tell that person they can't drill and pump their own water. So I don't know what they would replace it with if they did. I'm guessing that they would try to go to some kind of correlative right, but even that's going to have to be administered by somebody. And in this case, is that going to be TCEQ? Is it going to be the Water Development Board? Is it going to be a Railroad Commission? I got no idea.
I mean, that's essentially what they did whenever they tried to limit it to 10 acres or more to drill a well. When they put that in place in 36, and that came out because it was I assume because it was in conflict with the Constitution and the law of capture.
Well, no, I mean, that's still there. That's the exempt use wells for domestic and livestock. To qualify for the exemption, it still has to be on more than 10 acres of land, 10 acres or more land.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes, that's part of what Chapter 36 says. So that doesn't mean you can't have a well for under 10 acres. That just means you have to get a permit.
So essentially, they made it where if you're under 10 acres, you got to get a permit for it.
Right.
Okay.
Unless you're in Hayes County, in which case you don't. And so the developers there started putting in 4 homes per acre and everyone on its own well. And those wells in the last couple of years have started going dry because
It's
They're
a sand
cheap
aquifer.
developers. They drilled those wells down at the top of the formation and stopped when they hit water. They were pumping it up. Said this, now that the levels have dropped so far, the pump doesn't reach water anymore.
Is that in the sand aquifer? Is that in the Carrizo?
No, that's it. That's in the Trinity in Hayes County.
They just didn't go deep enough.
Well, yeah, they should have put in a utility well and gone really deep with a big well and served everybody. But because they were worried about getting a permit to do that, and they could drill individual wells without a permit, that's what they did.
And now they don't have water.
Yep.
Nice. Anything else on the legislative update? Any other questions, gentlemen? I'd like to skip down to future agenda items for a brief moment. Our hydrologist has something for that, and he is traveling, so I'd like to give him an opportunity to present that. He's handed out the handout to the board. Vince, if you would please.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Give you about 20 seconds or so here just to quickly glance at this. And I know I provided to you at the start of the meeting here, planning to walk you through everything here that's outlined. I'm gonna pause for about 20 seconds here, then I'll resume speaking. So last month when I attended the board meeting, I think one of those comments I said openly in front of this board was something along the lines that I'm excited and energized to be here. A month forward, still just as excited and energized to be here as I was at last month's board meeting. Had a lot of really encouraging conversations, insightful conversations. That's with board members, Mrs. Hobbs, members of the community here, and various public engagement events such as the GMA meeting that was attended a few weeks back. Through those conversations and also through rewatching, I think, every board meeting since November of 2023, had a bit of time here to kind of synthesize opposing viewpoints, my general thoughts, observations. One of those things that I did a few weeks back was dug through the rules. Then I asked one of my staff members to also take a look at the rules to make sure I wasn't missing a few things here and there. But what I've done is I've kind of just synthesized all these thoughts, these ideas, opposing viewpoints, into what I believe is something that's actionable. And when I say something that's actionable, what you'll see here at the bottom of this first page are what I'm calling proposed deliverables. There's 7 of them there. One of those questions that you asked me at the last board meeting, Director Gaines, was about the model. We'll get to that here. Unfortunately, it's number 7 on my list, which means something, but we'll discuss that here in a few minutes. But what I've done is I've organized this in a very deliberate and orderly fashion, which allows us to take things one step at a time. But when we are going about creating a deliverable, whether it be a tech memo or some sort of technical report, we're building upon one deliverable to the next, and in order to where we're not being wasteful or redundant with resources and or time. Time is limited, and resources are also limited here. So what I've done is I've really thought about this in a very methodical kind of approach to what I believe is necessary. One of those first things here are some rule recommendations, which I know that's an agenda item tonight, is the discussion of the pumping test. That was one of those things that kind of through my review was something I flagged, had a couple questions as it relates to monitor well siting and a couple other things that specifically relate to requirements as it relates to the hydrogeologic report aspects of that work there. So really thinking about all this in a level of priority, but also in a systematic way to where we weren't being redundant with any time or wasting any time, where we're taking one deliverable and making sure that feeds into the next and then the next and then the next. Where if we go to number 4 or 5 here, Well, we'll be recreating the will and then revisiting 4 or 5 again in 6 months because we didn't do those other things first. So that's the approach here. So just to quickly read through these, the first one of those is for rule recommendations. Those will help strengthen management strategies. The second one here is to support the water district as it relates to this current desired future conditions planning cycle that we're on. So some of those things are working with the GMA consultants to help make sure that they have all the required information from the GCD. But then bigger picture, one of those things that has come up here recently is discussion of the MAGs and specifically the MAG in GMA 7. How do we go about reducing that? There's been some interest in whether or not the DFC needs to be revisited. I think the one thing that I think everyone can agree on is the MAG is a little inflated there. Through conversations with the Texas Water Development Board, that is something they are open to changing. But one of the things that will be required there is some sort of technical justification, a letter that outlines the reasons why we believe that number needs to be reduced substantially. So that's one of those things that I would like to help the district with. And then that takes us into collaboration with Jim as it relates to continuing to finalize groundwater pumping and those source aquifer data sets that correspond to which wells are completed in which aquifer zone. Once we've got that taken care of, that takes us into more of an updated conceptual model framework as it relates to how is groundwater flowing through the system. We've got all these correlations as it relates to water levels. Where are these located spatially across the county? Let's run some scenario-based modeling where we take a look at rainfall events and we figure out when we get rainfall here, where is that water going? When we get rainfall here, where is that water going? Really synthesize what all that data is telling us about how water is moving through the subsurface here from north to south in Kinney County. Ultimately, how that then impacts springs that we see here within the county. Once we've got that taken care of, that's when we then go and revisit the management zones discussion. Once we have that updated conceptual model, deciding where we need management zones is then easy. And then finally, that then takes us into detailed study that supports drought management strategies. Once we've got the conceptual model built out, once we've got the management zones decided upon, that's where I think it then makes sense to really take a hard look at what that drought management strategy could and should look like. And in order to make sure that that strategy is effective at achieving what those intended goals are at the end of the day. Then finally, the last thing here on this list is revisiting the numerical groundwater model that Dr. Hutchison got started. One of those things that is currently missing, I did revisit what was provided, what isn't provided. One of the big things there at the end of the day is the pumping data set's not complete. So without that pumping data set, the model hasn't been calibrated. So there's a lot of really good pieces of data there that we won't ever have to touch again. But until we can get pumping situated, we can't complete the model. But along the way here, as we think about things such as management zones, as we think about updating the conceptual model, that's going to help us better understand how water's interacting in the subsurface, which then makes that an appropriate point to revisit the model, in my opinion. So what we've done on the second page here is I've just provided a high level overview in terms of a timeline, in terms of what I think is achievable based on the deliverables that I've outlined here. As you can see, I have things starting here in Q4 of 2025 and running all the way through Q3 of 2027. So we're talking a 2-year time frame. I know that sounds like a long time, but there's a lot of work to do here. We only meet monthly, so there's only so much that we can do and achieve from one month to the next. And so looking at this is my proposal in terms of what I believe is achievable. It doesn't mean we have to stick with it. Just wanted to make sure that I was getting this in front of y'all. I'm really looking for buy-in and also any comments, feedback, concerns that board members may have. Finally, I also provide 2 additional recommendations here. You'll see there's an asterisk there. Those 2 are specifically related to water chemistry, so geochemistry sampling across the county. So that's useful for 2 things, future contamination, but then also source aquifers. With geochemistry, we can source that water to a specific aquifer layer, which is useful for some of those unknowns as it relates to, well, we know we have this well here, and we have no other information. We're never going to pull a pump, but we can take a look at that geochemistry and then footprint that to a specific aquifer layer within any county here. And then targeted pumping tests to determine kind of what those local aquifer hydraulic properties are to determine where we may have some boundary conditions such as faults. So those 2 right here should qualify for funding under the Texas Water Development Board's new grant funding program that the state legislature has provided them. What we're hearing from Texas Water Development Board is that money will be released in multiple phases. And then that first swath of money that they will be releasing will be for data collection efforts. So both of these should qualify under that. And if that's something the district is interested in, I could help with the pursuit of those funds. That is grant funding. We're still working out the details, or we're waiting on Texas Water Development Board to work out the details there. But it could be some strings attached, no strings attached, matched funds. We've got to wait to see how that plays out. But at the end of the day, there is free money out there that has been set aside for GCDs, and some of these things that I believe are of interest would qualify under that. So with that said, I know I just rambled on here for about 5 minutes. I'd like to address any questions or concerns that the board may have. Ideally, I would be able to come back to the board at the next board meeting with a more formalized outline as it relates to these deliverables, if there is buy-in here today, that walks through kind of what those key deliverables are associated with each one of these tasks that I've outlined tonight, what we'll be attempting to do through that deliverable, kind of what those goals are, what those deliverables are, associated tasks or subtasks within each one of these, but provide you timelines associated with each one of those, start end dates, draft proposal or draft delivery dates, final delivery dates, and then the scope and fee workup associated with that.
So Vince, if that meeting happens, and I would say probably should, when we decide to do that, we can figure that out, but what kind of time frame might you estimate that would take? You know, the meeting part, when you come to give that presentation, at least an hour, right?
So,
I mean, to realistically, like,
what I would
give it a decent.
what I would like to do is get it in front of the directors at least about 2 weeks before that meeting.
Paper copy or something, I mean.
Email it to Ms. Hobbs and then have her send that out to where it gives you all enough time to reflect on that. So we come to the meeting and I can have a formalized presentation.
Yeah, I hope you can.
desirable.
Yeah. We might need a special meeting to do it.
But I would think we could walk through all these in about 30 minutes or so, but that's me speaking. And then that gives about another 20 or 30 minutes for questions there. But the idea is we can kind of workshop this over the next couple of weeks together collectively. So once we get to that meeting, there are maybe fewer questions at that point in time.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
I've dealt with grant funding in other areas, and it's like first in line, first in time.
Yes, sir.
So, as soon as you hear something on this, don't wait for a meeting. We need to be notified so we can do whatever it takes to get close to the front of that line.
Yes, sir. And we do have a grant funding specialist who spent 20 years at Texas Water Development Board at Freese and Nichols, who's very well aware of this. He's monitoring it closely. He's recommending that I have clients start considering what those wish lists are as it relates to those projects, and that we actually start putting together the technical approach for the justification for why that data is necessary. So if this is something you're interested in pursuing, we've got a team ready to act on it.
And since we're your favorite district, we want to be first among your districts too.
Yes, sir.
Giving yourself a love. Would y'all like to put this on the next agenda?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, at least put it on the agenda. I don't know, you guys think it should take, is it gonna take so much time that we should have a special meeting to do it? I mean, it's pretty big stuff. There's gonna be a lot of questions from not only us, but from the public, but that's up to y'all. I mean, it's gonna be a long meeting.
If I understood it right, and please tell me if I didn't. The idea was to take what we have here and come back and talk to you. And you're going to work on this some more. That's what we would see at the next meeting, right?
I plan to have what I call a letter proposal ready in about 2 weeks. Now, the hope is that if there are concerns that anyone does have, that I receive some emails, some suggested times for a meeting where we could kind of walk through what some of those concerns are. But my goal is to turn that around in about 2 weeks. So something that's probably going to be around 5 or 6 pages, where each one of these is very carefully outlined. That provides more substance than what's on this page and a half here. From that, if I get that to y'all in about 2 weeks, there's about a week worth of time to workshop that as well, to get that in the board packet before the next meeting. It's the timeline I'm working against right now.
Texas Water Development Board's fiscal year starts in October, right? October 1.
I believe so, yes. They're on the state cycle. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
question. I mean, I know you'll have to work with Mr. Bruton. Are we equipped to get anything done besides talk about it? Do we have the stuff to get on these wells, to get the information? Are we, I've been on there almost a year and I haven't heard anything we're gonna do about the water, that we just talk about it. We need to do some action, get it started, get it done. We've tried to draw a drought plan, and our drought plan won't affect anybody, no matter how strict we make it. If we don't get everything in line to where it will work. So are we equipped to get more equipment out there in the field? We have the money, the technology there. Is it gonna be put in the field? And how, we gonna sit and talk about it, or where we gonna get it done?
If this question is to me,
Well, it's for both.
you absolutely have equipment in the field, and for those of you that attended the GMA7 meeting and or TAG, you've got more equipment out in the field collecting information. I'll run through a little bit. Vince and I have.
You're still in my thunder here. I'm about to say,
Well, I mean, I know that we do have some.
Well, you got a lot.
you have one of the best data sets in the state of Texas as it relates to the data collection effort that a GCD has been conducting for an extended period of time. Most GCDs are starting what y'all been doing for the last 10 years, 2 and 3 years ago. So in terms of the head start, what we have to do now is we have to synthesize all that information. We have to dig in and look at it spatially. We have to develop correlation matrices and some model-based scenarios that tell us what that information really means at the end of the day. So,
Well, I guess the main thing is if the mag is wrong, and if we have all this information, how come is the mag so off?
so
I mean, in
there's a lot of background there. I've heard multiple things, but the good news is the Texas Water Development Board is open and will amend that mag. What we need to do is we need to provide them the technical justification for why that mag needs to be amended. Because of all the data that Jim's been collecting for the last 10 years, we have the information. We just have to organize it into a formal, thoughtful response to the Texas Water Development Board that tells them what the board's wishes are at the end of the day. At the end of the day, this is a board decision. What I would like to do, and so item number 2 here, you can see I have that through the end of this year and into Q1. We have to have that to the Texas Water Development Board, or to Dr. Hutchison, who is the GMA's consultant. We have to have that information to him, I would say, by late January. So that's something we have to immediately do, and we will see some results here in the not too distant future on that front. But we'll have to develop a technical report that supports whatever the board's decision is in terms of which direction they want to go. Keeping the DFC the same, that works. There's nothing that we have to do to change the DFC or to keep the DFC where it is. We just have to say we're keeping that where it is. But to change the mag, we do need to provide that technical justification that allows them to make a significant change that we're talking about here, since it is based on spring flow.
Okay, so we as a board, we decide what the mag is going to be, because Mr. Hutchison was our man on the ground, and he was our hydrologist. How come is the mag so much off than what he said this?
So you have a spring flow based DFC. The calculation there for the Texas Water Development Board is going to be a little different. What they want to know is what is actual pumping. And so we'll have to look at what that range of pumping has been that has allowed you to achieve your DFC. And then from that information, the Texas Water Development Board will be able to use that to update the mag. Usually what they do is they take a water level elevation, they plug that into the model, that then gives us the mag at the end of the day. But for spring flow, specifically for Kinney County, if we can help the board in terms of determining what that range of pumping has been, what the board believes is that acceptable range of outcomes there, they'll be able to take that information as they go about providing a new mag. So the board is still responsible for the mag at the end of the day, but we need to provide them the technical support and justification for why that mag should be changed. We provide them the right study, the right technical materials that aligns with kind of what the board's viewpoints are in terms of what that acceptable pumping is that has allowed y'all to reach the DFC. We'll end up at the same place at the end of the day, but they are the ones still deciding the mag. but the technical justification and support that we provide them will provide them the guidance they need to hopefully end up at the same conclusion where the board wants to be.
Okay, well, I've been on there for a year, and it seems like all we ever do is talk about it.
Well,
We need some action done where we can get some stuff straightened out. We can't even draw up a drought plan that would have any effect on anybody.
Well,
I mean, because everything is so out of whack. And I'm not understanding why, if the technology's there. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just asking this question because I don't understand why. I mean, I know I'm not up there with all the knowledge and everything, but I mean, it's an honest question.
Well, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but the one thing about the MAG, we've known the MAG has been inflated, was based on permits since 2015. The problem is you didn't have the data to come up with what a real MAG was and what's text. When Bill was at the water board, the district, the then leadership of the district, gave the water board some numbers based on permits. And at the time, you had the permit up to your MAG. So it's a different situation today. The good news is that the MAG, having a high MAG is not impacting, it's not the reason there's pumping. I don't know how to get into this, but having a high MAG, really what it does, it is a beacon light for anybody that wants to come into the county and try to export water. And so you get, they look and you've got this big number, but it needs to be a reasonable number so that whatever the modeled available groundwater is, you can pump to that limit and still meet your DFC. All of us know that if you tried to pump 70,000 acre feet, I don't know if you get 70,000 acre feet out of the ground all at once here in the county, you wouldn't meet the DFC. And so this board is responsible for managing the DFC. Once you manage the DFC, but you need a MAG that's reasonable. And so the fact that the MAG hasn't been addressed yet hasn't really hurt the district in any way. It does need to get addressed. I think the timeline is essential. I think what Vince has put together is very reasonable and actionable or implementable, if you will. But we're not in a position, just because we have a large MAG, we're not in a dire situation until private equity comes in or somebody tries to come in and export large volumes of water because they think we have this large modeled available groundwater, which we don't.
That's my point.
Yeah, and we
Because every county around us is in a same situation. We are, everybody's hurting for water. Del Rio, all these counties and towns around us are all in the same jam we're in.
some are a lot are worse, a
Yes,
lot
yes.
worse. We heard that this week. I mean,
Yeah,
or
there's
last
a lot of
week.
people at that summit.
Yeah, I mean, and people whose DFCs are, we only want the aquifer to go down 50 feet a year for the next 50 years or whatever. I mean, there are districts that are in a dire situation. The Val Verde County, the city of Del Rio pumps out of the spring. They don't have a well. So they're completely relying on that spring. And so, Mr. Minley, Director Minley, I absolutely agree with you. It is something that needs to get addressed. I think the way Vince is proposing in the outline of things, I think it puts us, look at the rules, you walk through steps, but we've got the foundational basis to make decisions, and the report that Vince is talking about needing to get back together to explain that MAG, the scientific, you need some things up front to be able to put that together. I've got a bunch of slides. I'll show you all kinds of data, but Vince is right. The model pumping stuff, when Bill originally started that model, we had 3 layers on that model. Vince came in and did the geology. We had 7 to 9 layers. And so each of those wells, where's that water coming from? And we've got hundreds of wells that we're looking at. If you don't know what well, which geologic formation that's coming in, it's really difficult to just put a model together. And so with Vince coming on board, being able to synthesize it all together, understand what your well control, what your source aquifer is, all of that, you will end up with a situation where you can run a model. And I know, Greg, not all models are wrong, but some are useful. Right. But you'd be able to run a model with some hypothetical scenarios. Let's do a simulation on this, et cetera. And so
the best use of a model, in this lawyer's opinion, is comparing hypothetical A to hypothetical B. Because that way you can say, well, it looks a lot better under hypothetical A than it does under B, we should do A. When you try, and the problem with the MAG is we're trying to compare hypothetical A, the pumping over the next 50 years, to reality. Reality always wins. Okay, and the model is never going to exactly match reality, but it is a planning tool that we need to use. I don't want to get too far afield. We're supposed to be talking about future agenda items here. I do want to add that the MAG has multiple purposes. It started out as a permit limit. The legislature very quickly got away from that because we were running out of water to permit a lot of places because we have issued permits, especially here, far in excess of what's actually being produced. If it's anything for a groundwater conservation district right now, it's more of a production limit. If you're producing less than the MAG, you can justify that you're going to be able to achieve your desired future condition based on the MAG saying you can produce this amount for the next 50 years and still achieve your desired future condition. But the goal is always the desired future condition. If you're under the MAG and still not achieving the DFC, you're not doing what you need to do.
Well, that's my point. The MAG is so high that we can't achieve anything.
Well, the
We
MAG,
can't even get a ground.
the MAG, again, the MAG is a tool that you can use. Now, the most useful part of the MAG, in my opinion, is, and the reason why we did this entire process is it limits the regional water planning group from coming into a district and saying, all right, we need 100,000 acre feet to provide water to this area. It's coming from there. It's all going to be groundwater from there. Hey, our plan matches. You know, even though it doesn't match anything about what the local groundwater conservation district was. And that's exactly how the first regional water plans came out. So that MAG is an absolute limit on what they can use in the regional water plan for future demand.
It's protection.
It's protection for the district from being overproduced for
When
The
it,
county.
regional water
Yeah,
plans.
but
Right.
when it's set that high,
Well,
it's not protecting anything.
and we provide data to water development boards, but they run their model and they give us the MAG, and that's the end of that. We don't get to challenge it. We don't get to protest it.
And on,
We get to come in
on the backside of
do it
that,
again.
we provided the data that the Water Development Board used to set the MAG and what it's at right now.
Well,
But without monitoring every well in the county, we cannot get an accurate reading on what's going out. That's simple. You know, it's just like if you're trying to pump water and you're pumping 40 pounds of pressure over here and you have a leak over here, you're not going to get the correct amount. It's water. I mean, it's not rocket science, really.
We have about 4 months to at least reduce the MAG.
Okay.
The
Well,
next
I'm-
planning cycle, there's opportunity and room for improvement, but in terms of what we have in front of us for this current planning cycle, we really have until the end of January. So I think any discussions over changing the GFC, there's not enough time for that at this point in time. We're too late in the planning cycle. That usually happens earlier in the process. We need
Where we're at now, gentlemen, is whether we want to have a special meeting to talk about this or whether we want to pull this back up on our agenda for the next meeting. That's where we're at right now. So I would entertain a motion that we put this on our next agenda.
I would like to, just an idea of what the, on the additional recommendations, what a water chemistry test would cost.
It depends on the suite. If we're just interested in cations, anions, we're talking something that we could do lab space
Speak my
here.
language.
All right, so anywhere from $70 to $700 in terms of how advanced we want to get
Per
there.
well?
Or well, if we want radionuclides and the full suite,
It's talking about how much you're gonna look at in the test.
What do you recommend?
so just cations, anions is all we need to footprint our groundwater. So we're on the cheaper end of things, $70 to, we'll just say $150.
Is that what you need for stiff diagram?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this depends on where your closest lab is, or if we want to do this in-house. If we want to do it in-house, it's cheaper. We need to buy the lab equipment. If you want to send it to the nearest lab, things get more expensive, but that's kind of the range we're looking at there.
Well, the only thing that I was thinking about is for water science this year, Mr. Jim. What are we going to spend? What is our next steps for this next coming year? Because our fiscal year is going to start.
Let me interject something just real
Okay.
quick, and I don't know if Vince and I have had a chance to talk about this, but we have been doing cations, anions, testing on, I don't know, hundreds that we've got already done. We took all of the old desktop documentation, all the stuff we've had to put in, stiff diagrams we've done. And we got a Texas AgriLight Texas A&M AgriLab, we're paying $25 for cation anion. Now, but Vince is right. If you want to do isotope analysis, radionuclides, there's a lot of other things that you can do. They're going to cost a lot more. But there is a foundational basis for some geochem stuff that this district has been doing for the last few years. Yeah, I mean, we go out and we'll take multiple samples from different wells depending on. Sometimes it's up, sometimes they're flowing. I mean, right now, Pinto Valley, I've got 6 wells that are in artesian condition flowing out of the ground right now. That might be different than if it's down 20 feet or so. And so we're trying to take some additional ones. Blake, to go, Director, we're going back to your question on what is the science. I think some of this, what Vince has outlined tonight, I think is exceptional in terms of deciding how we're going to move forward. I think this, what we're going to do, I'm pleased, happy, excited that we're getting back onto a track of methodical moving forward, getting things done, taking steps. You know, we were that way for quite a while. We felt like we were accomplishing things were getting done. We had a plan. This now puts us back on a plan with implementable goals, things that we can do. I like the deliverable reports. There's a lot of technical writing, but we've got a lot of data that can be put together and synthesized into that. And so
It's a schedule.
So I'm not answering your question. I don't know off the top of my head right now, but I do think that we can come up with something within the next few months.
Well, I think a lot of this overlaps.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been
Well,
thinking this
and
whole
There's
time.
funding
So
available through
And these additional recommendations, they feed into updating the conceptual model where these I separated because that funding should be made available. We're still waiting to figure out what that really looks like. Some believe that that will also pay for consultant time in terms of analyzing the data. Some think it's just going to be for the water chemistry samples themselves and nothing more. I'm of the opinion it will also pay for consultant time. So that's why I've separated this as kind of a separate line item, and we should have a little bit of clarity on those in the coming months. I would say the next 2 to 3 months here. But it sounds like the district's already well ahead of what I was thinking as it relates to the cations, anions. We create these stiff diagrams where it's separate triangles pulling in different directions based on the sulfate versus chloride concentrations or bicarbonate versus the calcium in the water. So what you look at is that trend as it relates to how these stiff diagrams are stretching. And so the Austin chalk, the assumption would be it would be stretching in that sulfate direction because that's where we get all the sulfur water. So what you do is you start comparing these, and they help us better understand how water may be moving from one aquifer system into the next if there is any commingling, or it closes the book on that very quickly when we see high sulfates in one and we see no sulfates in the other. It's like, well, we have no mixing occurring here.
Can kind of help identify where the water source is for the well.
And how that water is flowing through the aquifer systems as well. So, and then the pumping test was the other one here where that could pay for pump test equipment and or it could be paying for consultant time to actually go run and operate those pump tests and then analyze those pump tests to get the transmissivity and other aquifer properties that we look for as we're evaluating these aquifer systems.
I was just thinking of the things that we can get rolling on here to help
Yes, sir.
you. Because I zoned in on these because these are.
Well, and the first thing I've outlined here is rule recommendations. I think there's some things where we can add some additional clarity and color that make sure that the rules are in place, that hopefully keeps Greg's job a little bit easier at the end of the day. But really, that's all about strengthening groundwater management strategies, and that's when we can start right out the gate here, right off the bat. And then layering that as well with what we have to do in the very near term as it relates to this DFC planning cycle. Those need to have, I think, our full focus and attention here, at least for the next couple months, because those have deadlines or shot clocks associated with them. The management or the rules, not as much, except for, everyone wants better rules when a large permit hits. And so it's better to get those in place sooner rather than later.
President Robinson, I know this is something you and I spoke about in terms of grant funding to fix some leaky pipes. I think Director Ward, you and I spoke about this also. This would be the time I know his firm has individuals that can help do that. There's water coming from the Texas Water Development Board. There's grant money that's going to be available. And for this district, if you were interested to try to do something to help MUD fix the leaky pipes, it is an amazing water conservation
Be foolish not to get money for that if we can,
And
if we
there's
can obtain it.
money from the states or subsidized money for those projects
Yeah.
because of the recent legislation. So
That or this, and the city of Brackensville, as far as I know.
there's EDAP funding. There's a lot of opportunities there.
But you may ask.
I certainly think we need to pursue that.
Things to do.
Well, and this list, I know it doesn't touch on everything. It wasn't meant to be exhaustive. Notice there's nothing in here about permit reviews. There's nothing in here about the management plan. This was about those action items where I've heard a lot of opinions and viewpoints in terms of what priorities are. Those other things can be layered on at any point in time. These are the things that I think we need to get the ball rolling on now, and outlining it in a methodical, orderly manner, I think allows us to be efficient with our time as well.
And after all of us call you and talk to you, this is probably going to change a little bit before we see it at the next meeting.
Most likely, that's my assumption here.
If I was not mistaken, did we have a motion in a second to put this on the agenda?
I made the motion.
Made a motion? We have a motion and a second to put this on the next meeting's agenda. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Well, we're gonna try to set up a meeting, he said, in a couple of weeks to get together and talk to him on this thing.
No, Director, you can actually call him and talk to him at any point that you want to about this. That was my understanding.
But he's talking about all of us get together, have a meeting in 2 weeks before the meet, before we actually have them.
If y'all want to do that, we'll come back to it and future agenda items at the end of the meeting, and we'll set a date. Be fine by me. I have no problem with that.
I'll call him and talk to him. I'm pretty dumb. It takes a while to get through my head.
Whatever the board would like to do on it, I'm going to jump back up to 7 so we can go on down the list here. Discussion possible action call for annual audit. We got to do it anyway, so I'd entertain a motion that we have an audit.
I make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to have our annual audit. Does anyone want to name the firm? Do we want to go back with it? Edie?
Yes.
Okay.
Same firm that did the last, 3 years, 4 years?
Yes, sir. That would be Edie over in New Valley.
You Valley firm.
Just wanted to go ahead and get it specific. Motion's been made and seconded to call for an annual audit with the Edie firm in New Valley that did our last 3. All those in favor? Any discussions? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, discussion possible action transfer funds to Texpool. We need to, I'm going to let you handle this one. Tell them what we need to do.
All right, I would suggest right now in our money market account that we have here, we've got around 350,000. I'd like to go ahead and transfer maybe 125, 150 of that to Texpool. Then come in November, and usually November is when we usually get 2 checks from the appraisal district in November, because a lot of people pay their taxes in October. We get the check in November, and we would be in a position then to go ahead and maybe transfer some more into Texpool.
So this is to get it out of the money market account and have
Yes,
it
coming
making a
from
little more money.
local money market account into Texpool.
What about the CDs when they mature? Is there any reason to keep doing CDs or put that over there also? If I recall, the Texpool money is like a money market account, and that we can get it with 3 days notice or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
Is there any reason to keep doing
Is the
CDs?
return, was the return the same? I don't know what the return difference is. The CD versus the Texpool, what's the return difference?
Well, right now it's 3 versus 5. So it's significant. I mean, it's
And one of them, we've
One of
got
them,
one that's for 6 months. And
It's actually more in Texpool than it is. We don't need to see. No, we don't need to keep CDs.
Yeah.
and it
I mean-
just rolls over.
Ah.
I think the next one comes up in January, and then the following one comes up in February, I believe.
We're getting more money in Texpool. That's where it needs to be at.
We'll
That's
see
what I would think.
See
Yeah,
what the
the-
rates are then.
from an investment standpoint. I mean, we're putting all our eggs in one basket, not insured and all that. But on the other hand, it is a Texas government fund, which I can't imagine the legislature letting that blow up on us. I mean, because if it affects us, it's going to affect lots of entities across the state.
Everybody got money. Yeah.
So anyway, but I would recommend when the CDs come up,
Take a look at it then.
that we transfer them also. I mean, if the differential is still, what, 1.5
Yeah.
more, I mean, that's,
That's substantial.
substantial.
So what's your recommendation? What do you recommend?
I was saying 125, 150.
Well, I recommend 150. I'll put that in a motion right now.
Yep, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move 150,000 from the money market account into Texpool. Is there any additional discussion on it? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
When the CDs come due, please tell us before they roll.
Okay. I know one's in late January and the other one's either February or March.
Thank you.
Discussion possible action, approved purchase of science monitor well equipment. Is this, it's you?
Jim?
Who's up on this one?
Yep.
Well, I'll let Jim finish. I'll start it. Jim can finish it up. It's pretty much cut and dried. We have an invoice that, and it's got the backup on it. We get a lot of our equipment from in situ. I would call your attention to the second page. It's got in situ up the top. And you see the discounts that we get. Total list price, like $8,888. Customer price, $3,999.60. So we get a big, considerable discount because Jim does so much business with in situ. He passes that on to us,
That's substantial.
and which is certainly very, very beneficial. And I would recommend the board go ahead and approve this invoice. It's $20,135.83.
This is going to be off of this year's budget, right?
Yes, sir.
Jim, isn't this more of the equipment we talked about buying before?
This is exactly what we have done every.
What we talked about
Yeah,
buying?
what we talked about. This is Blake, you're asked about, Director Ward. You've asked about, what's in science, money, equipment, what we need. Director Minley, this is just more exactly what we're doing. I will probably get another invoice for more equipment next month at some point.
Yeah.
Before the end of the fiscal, we need to go through the inventory, look what we've got, but every time we're here, we put more equipment. And I think, we're always wanting additional information. We've got individuals, landowners and permittees that are, yes, you can keep coming out to our property, install equipment. And
I don't have all the buzzwords right, but a lot of this stuff is for the uplink for refitting some of the meters that we have now.
Yes.
So the data is constantly going up to the cloud. So we got real-time data on it.
Yes, sir.
That's what part of this is, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
I make a motion we approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Director Gaines and a second by Director Schott to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
And we do need to buy some more stuff before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Well, I'm with Carlos, we've got a list.
Okay, number 10, discussion possible action bylaws amendments.
They come up.
Yes, sir.
First off, I want to apologize that it had been a long time since I looked at these bylaws. There are several things that I'm going to recommend. Pretty extensive changes to the bylaws that you have. Unfortunately, I started the first page and was editing as I read through it. I didn't get to the very end of it until last night, where I read the section on amending the bylaws that says to amend the bylaws, you have to give each of the directors a written copy of the change 10 days before the meeting when they're going to vote on the bylaws. So we cannot adopt any bylaw amendments tonight. No reply to the written proposals 10 days before the meeting. So we can put this off until the next meeting, and you now have the written recommendations I have. If any of you have any changes you would like to make, to the bylaws themselves or to what I have recommended changing already, please let me know that. And I can draft up what your motion would need to be able to do that.
Get them out 10 days before the next meeting.
What's that?
And then get them out 10 days before the next meeting.
And we'll make sure we get them out 10 days before the next meeting, right? The couple things that I will have some questions about. One, the November, depending on when your November board meeting is, because that follows at least every 2 years, follows an election. Do y'all have November elections or May elections?
November.
Elections, right?
Yes, sir. November.
So we don't know if that election will have been completed, the canvassing of the votes, et cetera, by the time you have that November board meeting. I recommend changing that to December, or say the first regular meeting following the canvassing of the election.
I like that
Keep it
solution.
November if you want, and that's
I
what-
like that solution because if it's on and off year, you still get it in November.
Right, exactly. What I've suggested is leaving in November for the years where you don't have an election and the first meeting following canvassing if you do have an election. The second thing I have in here that I want to point out is bylaw 2.4, which deals with public comment. I think it's good practice philosophically to differentiate between bylaws and rules by who they affect. The bylaws are an internal document. They govern how the board's going to behave, how the staff's going to behave, and how the board behaves with the staff, etc. They don't impact anybody outside the building, as it were. Rules, on the other hand, impact the rights and responsibilities of third parties who are not part of this organization. The public comments section kind of talks about what the board can and cannot do and how you're going to conduct the meeting. A lot of that has already been included in your rules because that impacts the public. The public has notice now what to expect. They've got to sign in, got to fill out the form properly. They may be put on a time limit, etc. So all of that's already in your rules. We did that last year sometime, I think, or 2 years ago. So most of what's here, I'm not sure you really need it. That subsection C, that entirely deals with what the public has to do. That's not appropriate for your bylaws. I'm recommending we delete the entire subsection C. And we might be able to delete almost all of this, other than the parts talking about what directors can do.
Is that not in the rules? C's in the rules anyway, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I do want to point out that we've already had one federal lawsuit over the question of whether or not a board member may comment during public comment. And the federal court said, no, they can't. That would completely subvert the meaning of the Open Meetings Act. If board members can come up and under public comment, talk about whatever they want to talk about that's not on the agenda. So board members should not be participating in either as a commenter or interacting during public comment, because that could end up in being a violation of the Open Meetings Act if you start talking about things that aren't on the agenda. The most you can do, like we just had with Vince, is you can say, here is an item that I would like you to consider for a future agenda. You can discuss that as much as you need to decide whether or not it should be put on a future agenda. Don't go too far afield of that and start debating the issue. Okay. Simply talk about whether or not you want to talk about it later at a future agenda. So that deals with that rule. I put down in Rule 2.6 how I'm recommending we handle future agendas. There are a lot of districts out there that have an executive committee, and the executive committee is in charge of setting the agenda. Here, I'm recommending that we have the entire board be that executive committee, and we do it at each board meeting. So we have standing items that are going to be on every agenda, or routine items that are on most agendas. We have items the board can move and second and vote to have specifically placed on a future agenda. And then we have items that the general manager would come up, in between meetings that the general manager says should be on an agenda, so she can add that to the agenda if she sees that that's necessary to do that. So this lays out that process. So please read through this carefully and make sure this is something you all can live with. I think this, for this particular group at this particular time, I think this is the best solution. I think the last thing I need to mention is Rule 8.3, all of that should be in your Public Funds Investment Act policy. And so I've stricken everything here. We don't want to have the policy say one thing and the bylaws say something different. Let's make sure we have, one of the lessons I learned at EAA is don't ask the same question twice because you frequently get two different answers. So same thing here. Let's not have two sets of rules on how we're going to handle our finances. There's a public funds.
When you fix one and you don't fix the other, then you wind up in conflict.
Right, you end up with a conflict. So I'm suggesting we strike that. Audit budget, that's all fine. Taxes and fees, that's all fine, for the most part. I do want to point out, you put down in case of acquisitions of goods valued at $1,000 or more, $1,000 or more, we have to go get competitive quotation. In my experience, that is a very low number.
Yeah.
So, please thinking about what you think that number should be and let me know where it should be. I think it ought to be at least 5, maybe 10. I don't know what percentage that is of your budget. I have no idea what your budget is, but I think the general manager needs more flexibility than $1,000 to have to go out and get bids for.
Yeah.
The rest of this I think is fine. The construction contract says 15,000. That's probably, I don't know the last time you did a construction project, if you ever have, but I will tell you that for most of the political subdivisions out there, that's a much higher number. The last one I looked at, the lowest number I saw was 25,000, and some of them are up as high as 50,000. So I'm not sure what counties and cities have. The home rule cities have their own number. So the non-home rule cities, I can't remember what, and I probably never knew what that number was, but it's a lot higher than $15,000. And then, of course, then the last thing here is the section on bylaw amendments. Again, I apologize that I missed that until late last night. And when I ran across it, realized we're not going to be able to vote today. So please look through this, give me your comments on it, and we'll bring it back up the next meeting for approval of the changes.
So I would think that a motion to table would be appropriate for this one. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
We talked in the past about officer elections for a term of 1 year. You mentioned that we might add, officers serve at the pleasure of the board for a term not to exceed 1 year.
And that can be an amendment we consider at the next meeting. But we need to draft it up, and I'll be happy to draft that for you.
I would recommend that. I mean, hypothetically, if I'm treasurer and I find out that I'm, embezzling from somebody, but I can't be removed as treasurer here. I mean, there needs to be a mechanism at pleasure of the board to get rid of me. If I show up on Epstein's list, I mean, something.
Confession or something?
Hey, at my age, I'd like to be on the list. No, seriously. I mean, if something comes up,
Yeah.
there needs to be a mechanism.
Okay, yeah, and I'll get that drafted up so that the board can consider that amendment.
Greg, I got a quick question too. In here in 1.5 is standards of conduct, and we just passed a whole new ethics policy that I don't have it with me, but doesn't that include some of the same stuff? And do we put the ethics policy just in here?
No, I think we need to have separate ethics policy for a couple of reasons. One, I think that there might be something specific you want to change in that. And two, it gives the state auditor a bean to count.
Whatever. So
That's why we did
so
it.
you leave it separate. If there's any overlap, it wouldn't need to be in here though.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, and I did not compare the ethics to this, so I probably need to do that before we vote.
Yeah, just like you said, you wouldn't want,
Right.
two
Same
plays thing. Okay,
Same thing.
that's my only question.
Anything else? I'd entertain a motion to table. We'll get it on the
Make
next.
a motion that we table number 10 and 11, move them to our next meeting.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to table items 10 and 11. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry. Matt.
Matt did. Number 12, discussion possible action amendment to test well permit.
This is the permit process for, we've already had this discussion a couple times in here about whether this is a minimum of 1 year, maximum of 1 year, what happens if they continue to pump after the year is up. Rules don't specify. And so what I have drafted up, and you also got a copy of this, is a proposed draft to fix that problem. It requires amendments to Rule 303 and 2 of the subsections, and an amendment to Rule 304. If you're okay with what I have drafted, then I think we should have a motion here to propose these amendments and call a public hearing for the next board meeting. We can have a public hearing on this, and then the board can adopt this rule change following the public hearing.
So moved.
I will second that. Any further discussion?
Looks good.
It's been moved and seconded to propose this rule so we can have a public hearing at the next board meeting and subsequently vote the rule up or down. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
I'll work with Janelle to get the notice published and the rules published.
Number 13, discussion possible action drought plan.
You want me to talk, Charlie?
I mean, I'll start.
Go ahead.
I guess my first question, you want consideration of the one that's here or the other one?
Yeah, well, last month in July, the drought committee that was established of myself and Perry and Charlie submitted a plan to the board, and it's still, obviously presented to y'all, and everybody got a copy at that time. And I think it's in here in the tab. So in the same vein of taking some action and getting some motion, I think you all have a copy. I think you've seen it, Vince. I think you've seen it, Greg. But for it to move to the point where somebody gives their opinions on it, we as the board need to probably vote to have Greg give his opinion on it, or to have Vince give his opinion on it. I think, Vince, you've already said, the timeline, you want to delay that until other tasks are done, and next month that'll come up. So we can discuss, the flow of your projected timeline. But what I would like to discuss right now relative to this item is, does the board have enough of a majority that we would consider sending it to Greg just to look it over and see what he says about it just on the face of it? Is the format of it, closed? What would he maybe say? Oh, don't, put this. Obviously, we need to change the zones and, some things. But, if the board decides to ask Greg to make an opinion on it, which I would encourage, then he could do that. And then, Charlie, you got some additions to that. So, take the floor, I guess, on that.
The plan that's included in our board package, I don't know, I can't support. I don't know, the old KISS theory. Keep things simple. All these drought plans with various things and so forth. I keep going back to something a little more straightforward and simple. It was presented, or it was outlined to the board in July a year ago. I realized, three of y'all were not on the board. Furthermore, in May or June, one of our meetings a year ago, the question was raised, who on the board supports the drought plan, and all 7 of us that were on the board at the time raised our hand, including Randy, Matt, Blake, and myself. This is an outline of more of a straightforward plan that I would like, I will make a motion that we, send this with Greg and consider this as our drought plan. There are copies for everybody here. If someone says that you're springing it on us now, actually all this is a copy of something everybody on this board received last January 9th. We've had it since then. We've put off drought plan votes. Like I said, at least 4 of us here said we need a drought plan. If this isn't good, I would appreciate some, input, how you would change it. I did change one thing on here after looking at some of the other drought plans, around, the, restrictions, instead of
You got a copy of that?
this is a copy of the, I mean,
I don't think anybody has it, right?
This copy of Charlie's plan here.
uh,
This is what he's talking about. It's not in your,
So
it's not in your packet.
I've got some questions, specific questions.
okay.
So
Anyway, this is what,
how does this affect the city of Brackeville?
according, it's all permit holders. The city currently does not have a permit. And so,
You have an extra one there?
Huh?
You got
you
one?
know, I'm sorry. City does not have a permit, so, it does not affect the city currently. My understanding is that one of our elected representatives was trying to get the city or make them, I don't know whether it was ask, make, whatever, apply for a permit, but currently the city, does not have does not have a permit, therefore it wouldn't be subject to it.
Okay,
The reason for the trigger on here, instead of spring flow, spring flow has been a little bit erratic. We've seen, where the spring has come back when we didn't get rain here. We're still in a drought there. The spring, we get rain here and the spring doesn't come back. My solution, or say if what came out of that committee, from over a year ago was, the trigger would be where anything north of Highway 90 is classified as D3 severe drought. It would, for 3 months, it would kick in. It would end when it's not D3 for two consecutive months. That United States Drought Monitor is something we look at every meeting and have forever. Restrictions by zone, which initially said by Dr. Bill, but you're going to be up on that. We may not be able to implement this until we get the zonal thing. But I would like to get something on record, at least get it started. We can amend it down the road. We need a drought plan. It's based on usage over a 10-year period, which should cover some ups and downs. My understanding is that there are some wells that may have been misread during that period of time. There was one where, I looked at the meter, a photo of the meter, and, I don't know how anybody can read it. I think Jim and Marty finally discovered it was an honest mistake, but that particular permittee was reporting, about 10 times less than actual usage. Again, through nobody's fault except old, hard to read equipment. Things like that in this plan would be handled on a case by case basis on the board. We have a number of permits that are actually not pumping right now, so they don't have a history during this period. If, for instance, permittee A comes back and says, "Hey, I have a permit, I now want to pump," the board would handle that on a case by case basis. Probably talking to some of our farmers, see how much acreage, what crop, come up with a amount at that time. Finish the crop provision. Anyway,
We've only got one problem with that on the crop.
The what?
Okay, I've only got one problem with that on the crop. We can probably adjust that later. But anybody that plants in the drought and then they expect not to be restricted just because they got it planted and they irrigated it and planted during the drought, they shouldn't be getting any quarter on that.
Well, again, the money it takes to put a crop in it, if we don't have a drought management plan in effect when they plant the crop, they have legally, they have to be able
I
to finish it.
understand that. But whenever
So-
they're saying it on the triggers, if we're in a drought when they plant, we have been in a drought for 3 to 5 years already.
Well, varying degrees.
Yes. But if you plant during a drought, you shouldn't expect to be able to finish your crop out by irrigating just because you already had it planted when you planted it in the drought.
I think,
Are they supposed to
I think
go in?
legally you're,
How are you supposed to grow anything if that's the case?
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you can't second
When
guess.
it's not farm country, you can't expect it.
That's not our decision. Yeah, people have a right to farm. They have a right to plant. All right, this only would affect them if they decide to plant after the plan kicks in. Then they can plan what water they'll have. Okay? I mean, it's not up to you or me to tell them that they can't farm.
Greg, I got a question for you, maybe related to this. Could I ask you something about this?
Sure.
And I don't know exactly how you worded this, but we have the DFC and the MAG is what it is, and there's, some talk about in the future what it's going to be different. But you have mentioned that things in the past, like the management plan, the board is basically obligated in the management plan to manage to the DFC.
Right.
And if it's found that, we don't in good faith or whatever, if our management plan isn't effective or isn't efficient, or we don't make proper effort to have it established that it will manage to the DFC, then that's a problem. So our current drought plan is, look at the Palmer Drought Index. It's not a trigger, it's not a plan, it's just to look at it every month, So one could argue that there needs to be something, and like Charlie alludes to, the whole board is relatively in agreement that there needs to be some sort of drought plan, in place that's an improvement over what we currently have. So, if I don't know what your opinion on, you don't need to weigh in this, it's our decision, policy decision, but, and going what Charlie says, or not sorry, what Perry says, we need to start doing something. I mean, it gets to a point where if we keep delaying, waiting for new science, and essentially, I'm not saying we're ignoring current science, but there's an obligation. We haven't talked about this in too much detail, but the best available science, if we don't act on what the best available science is, then, that could potentially be a problem. So in my opinion, we need to forward these drought plans to you. I would forward both of them to you, and you can at least say, what you think about them. And then we can, make improvements but we need to get moving.
Well, let me kind of throw out.
Before we go any further with that, I just want to mention one thing that you might want to reflect on in these comments. House Bill 2078 and what that does with the DFC and what it requires within our management plan whenever we redo it.
Right.
I think the board needs to understand that.
House Bill what?
House Bill 2078, which passed this last session, takes effect on September 1st. And it changes the GMA, DFC, MAG process somewhat. Mainly, it says that you're going to have to start, when you establish the DFC, which right now is like a 50-year goal. And technically, let's say that the DFC is no more than 40 feet of drawdown. And 2 years into the planning cycle, we're already at 80 feet of drawdown. And somebody says, you're not meeting your DFC. And we come back and say, we have a plan to get it back up to no more than 10 feet by the 50th year, so we're fine. Okay? Legislature decided that's not good enough. So they want us to now do 10-year goals for the DFC. So if you allow for, say, 50 feet of drawdown, is that going to be 10 feet every 10 years? for 50 years. And so that would be 10 feet the first year, 20 feet down the second decade, et cetera. And then we'll also have to report during every 5-year planning cycle. We have to do a report to the GMA of how well we're doing on achieving our desired future condition. So, yeah, I think it's extremely important now that we're tracking that and we're taking action to do it. And I want to emphasize, you have to have a DFC that you can accomplish.
Well, to put it into the simplest of terms, accountability has been put on GCDs.
Yes.
You can't have pie in the sky DFCs anymore. You have to justify how you're going to do it.
And it also can't be a DFC that you ignore for 49 of the 50 years.
Right.
So,
Well, that brings us to one question on the DFC. So everybody talks about the DFCs, they talk about the MAG. So we talked about this a little bit while ago. Can you explain what the DFCs are and how you come to figure out what your DFCs are going to be in a state of where, let's say from here, you're going into a drought maybe next year, and then maybe 10 years later, you're coming back out of it. So how are you going to figure out your DFCs?
well, that's part of the reason why we look at it every 5 years, because situations change, science changes, get better information, et cetera. But yes, the desired future condition is exactly what it sounds like. It's what you want your aquifer to look like at some point in the future. At this point, it's going to be a 50-year plan with 10-year increments. So we're going to end up really with 5 DFCs over the next 50 years. The MAG is what the MAG is supposed to be. I don't think this is the way it's turned out across the United States, but what the MAG is supposed to be is the amount of groundwater you can actually produce every year for that entire planning period and achieve that desired future condition.
Whether it's a dry year or wet year.
Whether it's a dry year or wet year.
So that's the problem. So if you go into it and you set your DFCs right now, and you go into a drought for 10 years, you're not going to meet those DFCs. And that's going to get held against you?
Yep.
Very possibly, yes. If you're not achieving your desired future condition, then any person in the district or adjacent to the district or in your GMA can file a petition with TCEQ saying you're not doing your job. And we get to go up to and we've already gone through this once. It already happened. And this was in the 2010, 2012 timeframe. We were hauled in front of TCEQ, and we had to do a compliance agreement with TCEQ, say, we admit we're not doing all of our job. This is what we're going to do to correct it. And Ken Carver came in as general manager, and he followed that plan, and he got the reports to TCEQ. And at the end of that process, they blessed us as we were now an operational district. So yes, one of the things that they can petition over is that what your plans are not protective of the groundwater in the aquifer in the district, meaning you're not achieving your desired future conditions. So what do you do if you have a 10-year drought? 5 years into it, you can set a new DFC, but the other side of this coin is, when do people most need water during a drought, and where are they going to get it? You're not going to get it from catching rainfall. You're not going to get it from surface water. You're going to have to get it from the ground. And when you start doing percentage reductions, whether they're 10% or 80%, at some point you're going to run into somebody who is saying, you basically have shut down my entire business. I've had to close up shop because of what you've done. And now you're facing potential takings claims because you've closed a lawful business or shut down a farm or shut down a city utility or something because of your restrictions. Now, utilities are going to pump anyway. The bottom line is they're going to keep their system pressurized because it's a health and safety matter if they don't.
Public utilities.
I have time and time again tried to convince the utilities that the fact that they have to maintain pressure in their system does not mean that water has to come from the ground. They're Bull Verde on a routine basis, because their wells go dry, trucks in water. It's expensive and it's difficult and people hate it, but that's what they had to do. When you have to have water, you do whatever you have to do to get water. And so I think the regulations need to be achievable. They need to be something people can work with. But there's always a possibility you're going to end up in a drought so long that whatever you're doing is just not going to cut it. So you're not going to get far.
When is ours started? Because ever since 2019 by Mr. Jim's charts, we have fallen every year since 2019.
Yeah.
I'm going by his charts. When did it start? At
What do you mean fall?
The current drought.
Oh, the drought? Yeah, till 2020 essentially.
Well,
Yeah.
2019 to
Absolutely.
now.
We're-
And of course, now we're green and plenty of water everywhere.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the groundwater is.
Yeah, but you've met your DFC. I mean, you didn't meet it in 2014. It was extremely dry. I was here condition, and you didn't meet it in 2023, and you had 11 inches of evaporation, highest I've ever seen. But you've met it. You met it last year, and you met it every other year. This district has managed. I mean, you haven't allowed somebody to come in and start doing something that's going to impact the DFC. So far, we've been lucky. We've been good. I mean, and we've got rain right where you needed it, and the spring came back up. But you've managed the DFC thus far. Can we continue to do it if we don't get any more rain? We can't just get one rain event. I mean, you'll see my slides later. We got one rain event last July. We get one big rain event this July. I mean, and it put a lot of water in the aquifer, but it's not going to last.
Tailing off already.
And it's not just water gets pumped out, water's moving. I mean, even if you didn't pump anything, it goes away. And so
During those
this
periods,
is sidetracking, but you're right. Since basically 19, 20 was a dry year, 21 was a dry year, 22, 23, 24. Director Palmer, you and I were looking at the Quad 807 stuff, waiting for it to come out. And they first published a number, I think it was 17 or 18. And then we looked at it a couple weeks later. I think you're at your daughter's graduation or something. And, we looked a couple weeks later and they lowered it again. How that happened. And I think there's some discussions on looking at that whole process and the algorithms or whatever. But, we have not got regional rainfall like we need.
but the surrounding areas around us, the water is going toward the ocean. I mean, the water's going to go to the lowest point, and it's moving constantly. So even if we get rain up there, it's still moving out, just like you said. It's still moving by us and going past us, seeping through the ground, the fault lines, and all that. So I mean, I guess I'm just beating a dead horse, but it goes back to the Meg again. If we set aside that somebody wants to come in there and buy the water, then we can't deny them, can we?
Yeah, you can.
Can we deny them coming in and buying water if their mag is high enough? And
Well, they have to have transport. There's a whole bunch of hoops to go through. Director
Yeah.
Scott had a question.
transfer permits.
I have a comment on
Please.
this. We just listened to Vince lay out an outline for us here. I call it an outline of what we need to do in a time frame. So I feel that working on a drought plan now is premature, Charlie. I really do. We've got so much more information coming, and we need to do methodically, like he's outlined for us. And that's how I feel about it.
Oh, I mean, I said a while ago that we can amend it in the future, but we've had nothing forever. And we've worked on this. I think at a minimum we need to get going on this. I also would point out that a drought plan has nothing to do with the MAG or the DFCs. I mean, let's get something on the books, and then over time, yes, we'll refine it.
Well, I
But
agree with him. It is premature.
this is reasonable. Let's get it on the books and move.
I don't agree.
Well, you don't have to. I make a motion that we adopt an outline to send to Greg to work up something, because what procedurally the way this will work is that it doesn't, we have to get something worked up, we have to vote on it, we have to then send it to a public hearing, and then we have to do a final approval. Let's get moving on something now. We put it off for 2 years. We've talked about it all the time, and you're talking about putting it off for another 2 years.
I am. I'm talking about following this outline very, very much. I'm
The
putting it off.
outline will refine it.
I do not understand the rush
I don't know how you define rush, but I define it as stalling for 2 years is not, we have not rushed.
Why is it stalling when we're getting more and more information, Charlie? Explain that
When
to
are you
me.
going to do something? I mean,
When we get through with all our information.
I make a motion. If it doesn't get a second, if it doesn't get a vote, then that's fine.
Charlie, is your motion to
What is
send
the
that one
motion
or both
again?
of them to Greg? I'd like to see you move.
I want to know what you're moving exactly. So just do the motion again, please.
What, you want one or both?
Both of them.
Okay. I move that we send these two outlines to Greg, let him come up with the the legal wording for a drought plan that we can consider at a future at a future meeting. If that passes, then it will go to public comment, and then it'll come back to us for final passage. But I move that we send these two to Greg now.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to send two draft drought plans to Mr. Ellis for review and to come back to the board. Any discussion?
I see no problem with him looking over, but I'm also on with Randy and Mr. Claus as well, is that we have a schedule and a timeline. So
I believe that too. I'm behind you on that one. But if we don't get anything established to start out with, then we have to go through the same process all over again. We can wait on it to get the triggers or whatever you're going to use to set this drought plan up. I understand that. But there hasn't been one on the books for 22 years. And our audit states that we're supposed to have a drought plan. Our audit states that we did not have a drought.
Mr. Ellis, are we required to have a drought plan?
Nothing in the water code requires you to have a drought plan. Your DFC indicates you have to do something to achieve a DFC, which would indicate you've got to have a drought plan to achieve the DFC.
And I do agree it's premature because we don't have the information and we should have had the information 10 years ago. So
I think we're wasting time and money jumping ahead and trying to do that whenever we don't have rules, recommendations, desired features, conditions done, groundwater pumping, source aquifers, or any of the updated conceptual model, or redo the management zones. So you're jumping way ahead of it. I don't agree with it. I think it's a waste of time and money at this point.
how does our attorney feel? I'll put you on the spot.
He's going this week.
Pleasure of the board, right?
Ideally, you always start with getting all the data that you possibly can, do the science, build a plan for what you want to do, and then start adopting rules and issuing permits based on that plan. Based on the information that we have, I would be concerned about putting 40% reductions on people when we don't know that that achieves the ultimate goal. That would be my biggest concern with
That's
this.
30%.
Yours is 30, his is 40.
Oh, okay.
And none of that's happened yet. That's so far away from happening. All this
Right.
is a motion to have you look at it.
Right.
So ideally,
So- I'm happy to review and give my comments on each of the outlines. I'm happy to try and reduce them into a set of rules that can be adopted. I second the idea that we've got to have mainly the conceptual models done so we can run this through. And again, a good use of the model would be if we do 30% reductions, what do we get? If we do 40% reductions, what do we get? And the bigger question there is you need to have stakeholder groups tell us, can anybody achieve those reductions? Are those even achievable numbers? Like I said, I don't want to do anything that's going to start putting people out of business.
I think Mr. Vince has a very good plan here to start out with, to work with, but we can revise this drought plan as we go along when we get there.
And no doubt you're going to have to over time.
yeah, and
Yeah.
something real quick on that. Vince, this is dragging out probably too long, and let's just vote on this, I think. But, researching what Texas Water Development Board is using, they're still using a one-dimensional model from 2011. And they don't have that new model ready for the current planning cycle. And the new model technically that they have is not even going to be available till after this current planning cycle. So, you know, the model they're using, the GAMs, all that, I mean, that is so old. Ideally, it would be much better than it is right now at the state level, let alone what we're doing here. So, I mean, it's kind of a tricky deal, but anyway, that's what it is.
I've got one question, a legal question. So when you're doing something like this, especially here in this county, and there's science back that a lot of these wells don't even affect this spring. So you're going to put a blanket over all these people, and you're going to make them cut back on their water that has no effect on this right here. What is the legal outcome of that?
That's not true.
Yes, it is. It
No,
doesn't
it's
make a
not.
difference. It
No,
doesn't make a difference what zone it is. This is a legal question. If you cut people back that have nothing to do with this, what are the repercussions of it?
If we're cutting people back and we can't show that what we're requiring them to do has any impact on what our ultimate goal is, then our rule is invalid. And we're subject then to damages lawsuits because of the takings of the damage we've done to them, or lawsuits to try to invalidate the rules we've adopted.
You're assuming, Matt, that that's a blanket cut, and that drought plan is not a blanket cut.
It doesn't make a difference what you put on there. You're putting it in a zone. It doesn't make a difference because every zone has a cutback, right?
Those zones are the best available science.
No.
Yes, they are.
There's ranches around here that have no effect. That's factual, but you're going to put them in a zone.
We're putting stuff in there
That answers
based
my
on what they
question.
come up
No,
with.
that
They
answers
may
my
not come up
question.
with it for a while, but it'll be based on what this individual comes up with, or we can go back to the science. The best science we have now is what Dr. Bill gave us here a while back.
If you went around the science, then you would have already cut those people out, but you didn't.
But let me throw this out. One of my clients, with help from Texas State University scientists and hydrogeologists, their own and others, worked out a zone around a spring flow that they were trying to maintain. And they created that, and they adopted rules prohibiting wells in the same formation that feeds the spring, any future wells. And in response to that, one of the permittees that had wells within that zone was given permission to drill wells outside the zone. And when they tried to move their pumping to the outside the zone, the district said, no, you're too close to the zone. And they drew the line where the zone is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that situation is currently being litigated in the federal court. Because the permittee is saying, you drew the line and then you told me no, I couldn't do it. And I had to have the water rights and you're not letting me pump my water rights. And so that's now all being litigated in the federal court. I don't know what's going to happen with that lawsuit.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of permittee violations that are part of that lawsuit as well. So, you know, the where you draw the line is extremely important. And my advice to that client was, yeah, let them pump what they're pumping. If it turns out that it's having too much impact on the springs, redraw the line and readopt the rule with the new line. But don't draw the line and then say, no, your wells are outside the line, but that's not good enough. That's, you know, you need to be very careful how you draw those lines. And you need to be very careful what you're requiring people to do, at least with the best available science we have, accomplishes the goal that we're setting.
And that groundwater district has a drought plan, though. I mean, talking about there's a drought plan for that, just for that zone.
Yes.
All right.
There needs to be a drought plan, but you have to be careful about the way you
Totally. And there's no argument about that, man. That's totally correct. You got to be very careful.
Probably the biggest part of that zone was no new wells in this formation period. What hasn't been litigated is that they just take a bunch of water from people because they can no longer tap into that zone. And until someone files that lawsuit, I can't tell you.
Don't know until you know, yeah.
But if the aquifer's healthy, everything would be flowing. The springs would be flowing if the aquifer's healthy. That's just the whole point of this whole thing. If the
So
aquifer's not healthy, then it's not going to flow anywhere.
I don't want to.
We're in discussion right now. You can call for the question anytime you want.
I don't want to step in with a hydrogeologist, but in my experience, this whole district, the layers of aquifer and the formation and the way that they flow is one of the most complicated that we have in the state.
Absolutely.
So, best of luck.
And it brings
Mr. Ellis, you represent quite a few districts, correct?
Yep.
Do they all have drought management plans?
No, they don't all have drought management plans.
Are they required
The
to?
biggest district I represent is the Harris Galveston Subsidence District. They never had a drought plan.
I want to say this one more time because apparently nobody heard it. Chapter 36 does not require
It's not
a
required.
district to have a drought management plan.
But they brought it up in our audit that we didn't have one.
I don't know what you're referring to because as far as I know, they don't even mention whether you have a drought management plan in your audit or not.
So Wes, are you saying we don't need one, or what are you saying?
No, I said it's not required. That's exactly what I said. I haven't said anything different.
Okay. So, noted.
The other thing I said was it's premature.
I heard that.
Well, and I believe it is premature until we get all this worked out and get
It's
the.
not, well, Perry, you believe it's premature to send it to Mr.
No.
Ellis?
I believe we need to get something on the book before we can
All right.
show that we're at least attempting to follow the laws. and
All
the
we're
rules.
all we're voting on is sending two drafts to Mr. Ellis. That's all it is.
Motion's been made and seconded to send 2 proposed draft drought plans to Mr. Ellis for review. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign.
great.
4-3, motion carries.
I want to make one more statement. So on this, when you're looking at this, how is this enforceable? And who's going to enforce it?
Number 14, discussion possible action, date change for regular board meetings.
I move that we change the regular board meeting to 6 p.m. the second Wednesday of the month, as we used to have it.
I second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to change the meeting date back to the second Wednesday.
6 p.m. second Wednesday every month, regular board meeting.
Any discussion?
Yes. I think what's happening here, David is being, considerate, kind to me. My wife and I are depending on how you look at it, lucky, fortunate. I would use the word blessed. That, we own and solely operate in excess of 24 individual businesses. When I was elected to the board, we cleared our calendar of the second Wednesday for 4 years. That naturally pushed things elsewhere. I haven't even looked at 26 yet, but for the remainder of 25, I'm already booked on the 4th Tuesday for the rest of the year. And you'll not be able to attend our regular meetings. So I think that's why this has come up. Anyway, David found out about it and he brought it up because of me. So that's why the motion is on the floor.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, real quick, one of the considerations, and Director Shaw, Director Robinson, you could weigh in on this, and Greg, you could weigh in on this too. The consideration for changing the last meeting, and I'm sympathetic to that in a certain degree. That when it's necessary for Mr. Ellis to be here, we should bring him here. I would go on record, though, that I don't believe he needs to be here present in person every meeting. So I don't know that we've ever even voted that he should be. I know some people have said he should be, and maybe he's been here the last couple times, and that's great. But Mr. Ellis, you can confirm or deny this and whatever. Your fee to get here is over $3,000 extra to be here in person. And to me, with technology, it's not fiscally responsible to do that, in my mind, with the taxpayers' dollars when a Zoom call could result in the same gain to this board. If we have a question for Greg Ellis, if we say, what do you think about, this drought plan review or whatever, we can on Zoom say, Greg, what do you think about this drought plan review? And that can be done as efficiently on a Zoom call. If we direct questions to him, we can get his answers on a Zoom call. And that's $3,000 plus cheaper every month. And if we bring him to every meeting, we have special meetings, and I'm not trying to hit your bank account, but I just think that that's a better way to do it. So the main consideration last time when we voted to change the time was in interest of getting Mr. Ellis here in person every time before we knew what it cost.
I disagree. That was not the main purpose. The main purpose was availability.
Okay, well, I think he's available at this time, 6 p.m. the second Wednesday, to be on a Zoom call. I think that's possible.
Well, we changed the meeting date to a date that he was available during the month, and there was no conflicts with any of his other clients. And that's why it was changed to that date, not so he could be here at every meeting or had to be here at every meeting.
The conflict that this would create is I've got the Harris Galaxy board, which I go to every month. Meets in Friendswood at 10 a.m. And if that board meeting usually lasts between an hour and a half and 2 hours. If I leave there at noon without stopping, I can get here by 6.
Barely.
Right.
But you could easily be available on a Zoom call.
I can, but we need to improve your technology here because in the past it's been difficult to spend. I can hear the people who are right next to the microphone, but I can't hear the people away from the microphone, and I can't hear the public.
All right. Well, I think we can work that technology out.
A lot of that time saying repeat what they said.
Right. Well, yeah, that's going to happen a little bit. But, the trade-off is we're going to have a director that was elected by the people to represent their interests, and he's not going to be able to do his job because the time is not, compatible with his life. So I think we need to pass this motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Just change the meeting date. If you're in favor of changing the meeting date.
Change the meeting back to second Wednesday at 6.
Not in favor of bobbing back and forth with this.
Okay.
I just don't.
I'm calling a vote here.
Charlie,
we got 3 in
what's going to
favor.
happen if you want to?
We've
Let's call the vote.
Have we got 3 in favor? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion fails.
Thanks for on-election.
So you're voting Mr. Gaines off just that easy?
No, they didn't.
I didn't vote anybody off.
That's what it basically amounts to.
Discussion possible action, financial statements, July 2025.
Let me read this off. Total income $660,510.56. Total expenses $362,409.88. The net profit loss $298,100.68. Ad valorem taxes receivable $900.06. Expenses payable $2,543.19. The net is a negative $1,643.13. Accounts receivable $20,210.42. General fund is $20,802.60. Money market $325,815.88. Petty cash $351.72. well log deposit $3,700. Texpool $830,278. First CD is $135,179.19. And CD number 2 is $256,944.48.
I would point out again that whatever those numbers are next to Texpool, that .0000026,207 are meaningless. You know, if you look at tab number 16, it shows Texpool at 5.29%, which probably ought to be inserted there. Now, Texpool varies with the market, but I have no idea where that keeps showing up every month, that ridiculously small fraction. Get rid of it.
Looks like data.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
It's on a spreadsheet. It'll look and see what's in the cell.
Maybe that's the daily rate. I don't know, but that's too small a percentage.
I think it's something stuck in
to
it.
even think about. Might even be hourly. So,
I need to start calling them every month right before the.
This is an action item?
It's down as an action item. Discussion possible action. I assume we need to accept it, Greg?
Yep. I'll make a motion to accept it as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and to accept the financial statements for July 2025. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Review monthly investment report. Item number 16.
This is just a review.
That is just a review. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, let's move on to number 17. Discussion possible action, invoices received and invoices paid. Only got one that I know that we just approved.
Which one was it?
The big one was the $20,135.83 we approved for scientific equipment.
It's already hidden.
Yep. It's just in there because it's coming out. I'd entertain a motion. We approve the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Motion by Director Plan, second by Director Schott to approve the invoices received and invoices paid. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Review Texas Water Development Board Drought Index and Aquifer Monitoring Data. Mr. Burton, I believe you're up finally. You still awake over there?
Evening. Good to be here. Let's see. Start off here. So what's in the board package? Tony, what do they have here? Is that what I sent you yesterday? Or This one's, it's this. Yeah, okay. So what you have in your board package is a complete, not complete, I guess it's not it's everything that's automated. Depth of water graphs are probably 100 or 80 or something of those. All of this will get posted onto the website if it's not there already by tomorrow, I guess, tomorrow morning. What I want to walk through that's not in the board package, this also will get posted tomorrow. But what I wanted to do, as opposed to going through the depth of water graphs, and I do most of the data that's been downloaded here was downloaded on the 18th of August, and today's the 26th. One of the consequences of being a little later in the month is I download all the data and put all the graphs together. We have since seen rises in water levels. I know there's some new wells that are flowing up in the Dooley, Pinto Valley area. But one of the things that I wanted to do tonight is to look at the rainfall. And I mentioned that we need more rain than every July, and we got a big event last July, and we had a graph and we put together. We showed you some of the totals. This July, we also got a big event, but the two events were different. One put a lot of water regionally into the county, and we saw rainfall. Anacostia Mountains, we had 12 inches of rain at the top of the mountain over the course of a couple of days. 8-10 inches were common, but kind of right up in the recharge area for the springs, kind of this northeast part of the county. We had very similar numbers. Some of the numbers in Uvalde and Edwards were higher, 8 inches or so. There's some nuances in the data, but I just wanted to walk through and show you a little bit of that, and then to walk through some groundwater elevation stuff, the pressures, the piezometric surfaces. Vince and I talked a little bit about this briefly before the meeting, so just some of the groundwater elevation stuff, where the water's coming from, where it's going. And then what we've seen before that are kind of regionally, these are all about the same elevation, and then others that are a lot different, either higher or much lower. And again, this will all get posted up. I don't want to take a lot of time. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of graphs, but we'll walk through it. So our monitoring network, this is as of March. We've added a few more because of that, but all the red are monitoring. These are exempt and non-exempt wells. And the blue triangles are rainfall. Texas Mesonet's in here, Kinney County, Groundwater Conservation District. We have 8 that we monitored we've installed and we monitor independently. And then I've got a whole nother app that tracks rainfall. Director Palmer, you and I have talked about this before, where you can pretty much select any point in the county and it'll give you an idea of what the rain that we got in that county. Why is rainfall important? I think Director Midley, as you said, if we don't get rain, we're not going to be able to survive here without rain. And at some point, we all need water. Let's flip to the next slide. So permanent wells, these are all. So I'm going to talk about before I get into rain. Sorry, this is the other way around. So the monthly, production, we talked about pumping and where the water's coming from. And I think to sort of continue on what Vince was talking about earlier, the pumping data set, we've got good numbers in terms of, what's pumping, but where's it coming out of? So these are permanent wells consistently pumping over about 50 acre feet a year. Go to the next one. We have lots of wells that are permitted, but that are not operational. I think this goes into your drought plan. I think Director Gaines, you mentioned that if there's somebody who has permitted water rights in one of these wells and they decide they want to put it into operation, there's issues. But we have a lot of wells that are permitted but are not being used. Next. Okay, monthly production. This is as of July. You can see each of these numbers on the bottom or location IDs. Want to go back up one more. So you see that. So each one of these are non-operational. Go to the next one. So each of these P numbers, or no, sorry, the other way, the green dots. One more. Yep. All these P numbers you can see. So you pick a number. We've gone through the same thing before. This is the same map. I haven't changed it. So next. Okay, next. And so this one, you can see what's being pumped every month. This is what's come in. There are a few, you see these like January to May, they just reported a We didn't have monthly numbers, but a set number. And so you'll see this graph will change a little bit. And we certainly have statistical information about how much was pumped each month, what the total is, where are we this year compared to where we were last year or the year before, et cetera. Next. This is annual production since the inception of the district. These are reported numbers, best available. I have some questions about some of the earlier data, but this is the best we have. This is what we know. You can see in 2014, a year that was extremely dry, where we did not meet our DFC. We had 4,900, a little less than 5,000 acre feet. In 2022, we pumped 10,600, and we did meet our DFC. So there's some, I don't know, read whatever you want, but this is the data. This is the best available information. Next. Okay, so rainfall. Wow, that's a little small. Writing is close to the page. Can you blow it up a little bit? So this is, or here, go to the next one. Actually, sorry, go to the. Oops. So this is this year. Let me see last year's. I want to see the difference. Okay, so this is July 2031. We had one rain event. It happened in one day, and you can see the totals. Going up into Edwards County, up by Rock Springs, about 4 inches, 2.3, 3 inches, 4. You see these numbers come around, get 7 inches right there at Fox Ranch, 5, 4, that's Hurwitz, Kinney, Kickapoo, see in the middle there, 3, Uvalde, 6, and then you get down to the bottom and we didn't see anything. And so a lot of rain kind of in the northeast part, and not a lot other than up in Edwards. Okay,
Aren't there some stations up in here?
So
I thought there were some other stations up in there.
not that I'm aware of. And if I miss,
here?
what's that?
Is that in here or
No,
no?
sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Director Palmer, I apologize. I tried to explain that in the beginning. At some point, I'm printing
It'll be
out
on the website, so
It'll
we're
be on
good.
the website.
All right.
At some point, I'm printing out a lot of paper on all
We're
this
good.
Well,
stuff.
I mean, everything that comes down through
That's
there,
fine.
every time it hits one of those cliffs is a potential recharge. So
We talked about that area, remember, I think last month.
Yeah.
We need to get some.
Yeah, that we need,
I-
Director Ward, you're exactly right. That
They
was
may
what
be-
we need.
they
to
may
do
be new because I thought I had just seen it in the last few months. I thought I'd seen some.
There
of
may be, and we have been in contact with Texas Mesonet, and they were interested in putting some more stations here, and where we would want them.
How many of those are also covered in Quad 807? Maybe one of them?
Oh no, all these
No.
are is part of Quad 807.
Yeah, it's bigger than the whole.
Now
county.
what goes into that Quad 807 rainfall total number?
Wait. So these are within.
And they're within Quad 807,
but
the official Texas Water Development Board Quad 807 number has very little to
Yep.
do with any of those.
Yeah, that is exactly correct. Yeah, yes. And we've debated about the algorithm and how they're doing it and why they do it and what things are there. And you've got
Yeah.
Nobody get a copy, can it?
Well, yeah, we do have it.
Yeah, no,
You can't.
this is a whole different.
I know, but
Yeah.
it's different than what
Yeah.
the state determines what happens.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and so we met the DFC, we didn't meet the DFC.
But Quad 807, what the state says, figures into the DFC. And this is what, helps us get the spring flow. But Quad 807, according to the state rainfall amount, is a different animal.
Right.
All right.
And we don't take into account evaporation. And you saw in 2023, we had 11 inches. I mean, that's, that you need 11 inches of rain just to get back to zero. I mean, we only had 18 or whatever it was. So this is evidently Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
We're moving over
I
to
lost
Las
it.
Vegas and,
We lost internet.
and Castle.
Oh, yeah.
If we want to go to YouTube.
Technology.
Sorry.
Isn't it great?
Making light of it. All of this information, bottom line, we got rain this month, or last month in July, and it was a lot different. You looked at the totals and that we had really scattered across. I've got this with you. So south of Standard Lane, 3.6, Boiling Springs, 8 inches. Big Mill 2.8, up there by Silver Lake 3, right back here behind the fort, 5.3.
Alford got 8, 'cause I got 8.
Yeah,
in my house.
Spofford about 8 inches. Up there by the Ox Ranch, 8.9. Dooley right over here, Pinto Valley, 3.1. Gator Mill, which is out there, Mr. Bylaw, WT Bylaws, we've got several wells on his property that we monitored, 10 inches, 9.97. Gun Hill right at the highway, that's a big old irrigation well right past the old Border Patrol check station, 9.6. And then back up here, Tularosa Road, 4.4. Here at the Kinney County office, it recorded 4.2. Although I realized we put up a weather station, I felt so bad. We put up a weather station and it started raining, and then we reset it. We were putting it online or whatever. We ended up resetting it so that what's on the website isn't actually what we got to rain. City
I was
Lagoon-
wondering what happened here.
Exactly.
Because I went to look at it. It's like, I know there had been more rain here than
Well,
that.
we hit the button to reset it and didn't. Nah, that's all right. Live and learn. Laguna, right off 55, 334, about 10 inches. Bondi Ranch, 4. McKnight, 8. Out there by Mr. Schuster's house, that area about 6. Shahan's had about 3. Tularosa Road, 5. So anyway, my point is, it was really erratic. It wasn't. I mean, it covered the whole county. Everybody got something. Some people got a little. Some people got less. Okay, so here. So all of the ones all the rainfall that I just read off to you are not on this map, right? These are, we've got a lot of rainfall data. So 2.2, you see 5, 8, 7. Anyway, it's different. We see different responses. Let's go through and see some of the responses. This is the spring. You got this is actually not the flow. These are all going to be groundwater elevations, piezometric surfaces. So this is the spring basin. So it's not flow, it's the pool there on the fort, and we're at 0, and then it's, within 24 hours, you've got 10 feet ahead. The pool fills up, water starts flowing down the creek. Okay, do the next one. This is Dooley. Again, Dooley's come up quite a bit since I did this graph already. I downloaded the data on the 18th. I printed this on the 26th. You can see Dooley well, keep going. But here, go back for a second. Just let me walk through some of these elevations. We'll go back one more. So the spring basin, the bottom of the basin is about 1107 mean sea level. I mean, this is if somebody wants to get a surveyor out there to give me an exact, to the 100th, great. But we're, for practical purposes, about 1107. Go to the next one. So this is Dooley. You see that we're in, ground surface. Dooley's been artesian for a while. We're 1170, 1180. We're a little bit above, maybe 1177 right now as of this morning. Next. So this is City well number 1. This is right over here by the yard, just where I'm pointing right here. Very similar to where the spring, we're right about spring level, 1107, 1110. The ground surface, about 1115. So when it flows, it goes above ground. Next. C2, this is a major pumping. The reason it's blue is because that pump is always on. It's going on and off, on and off and on. This is a consistent draw from water that's going to the spring. And you can look at the elevation. It's about 1100. So we're pulling water. But this last July, you see the massive increase. We got rain, and this well came right up just like the spring. This July in 2025, there to the right, the same thing. Not as much of a rise, because we didn't get it there, but you've got again a rise. When the spring rose, this rose. There's a lot of water that's coming out of the ground right here at 1100. Next. This is Shoehorn Ranch. Again, this is out towards Pinto Valley. Look at the head difference between 1190 or elevation, the pressures 1190 to 1160. A lot of water in the ground up there. Next. Is there another one? This is also out towards Pinto Valley, 801 and monitoring well. This has come up quite a bit since I plotted this. I downloaded the data on the 18th. This one I printed on the 19th. But again, a lot ahead. 1160, 1150, much higher than the spring. Next. This is 202B. This is Rose, and we're right about spring level, 1100. A little below 1110. This has also actually rows. You know what, I've got rows on the other slide here. I'm not sure what this one did. Next. This is Pinto Valley, same area, but again, the head differences. So keep going. Next. I don't need to go through all these. There's another one, same general area. This one is it. Oh, go back here for a second. This one is interesting because it starts off back in 2024 with a lot of head, and now we're now right in the middle. And so this is something that I'm going to work with Vince on. We'll look at it, look at some geophysical logs and stuff, and try to get a really good idea of what's happening. The reason it goes up is there's back pressure. Somebody's pumping and comes back up. Next. Fort Clark mud, same thing. This is well number 2. This is the closest well to the spring, and they're about the same elevation, about almost 1,000 feet deep. And you can see the water is really close to the surface. I think on this one we're only 10 feet or so below ground right now. But again, big rise back July 24, little less, but some rise in July 25. Next. Lindsay, Bondi Ranch, same thing. This is another one that's real close to Rose, real close to spring elevation, tied together. Next. Is there another one? Oh, okay. So here. So just kind of throwing all of these together, you saw the spring was about 11.7 at the elevation. So all those ones on the bottom, I've got a KCE that's an easement. I don't have data past July on that one. But you can see you got a lot of them that are all looped together. The green line at the top is Dooley, and then the line that's even further up, faint gray. I probably should have had a better color on that one. That is the Tularosa well, which is the real indicator well that when there's rain coming down, if that one responds, gets above about 1190, your spring's going to flow. I mean, we've seen that for 10 years. When it gets below a certain amount, we're in tough spot for the spring. Is there anything else, or is this it? Okay. I will submit. We'll have all of these up on the website. Marty will get it done. Thank you for putting all that together. And be available to answer questions.
Beautiful picture, Marty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Hey, Jim, whenever you get time, there's a couple of little hiccups on that Lossmore Spring Basin. Got to look at since the big rise.
Well, that's when they fill the pool. So every time they fill the pool, that basin goes down. There's a little bit of a the fort's operating. They direct it in to fill the recreational pool that drops, and then once they close it, it eventually fills back up. But I can look at it more if you'd like me to.
No, you guys.
No further questions. Let's move to 19. Director request for items on next or future agenda.
Let's go to that number 9. So can y'all put something together what y'all need before the end of the fiscal year?
Yes, sir. That's being worked on right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's 10 and 11.
I don't know where you're at. I'm on 19.
He went back to 9.
I'm going back to the ones that are putting on next agenda. Ah, okay.
Yeah, we already voted.
Bylaw.
Yeah, well, those are going on there.
Yeah.
I'm looking for anything else.
I'll just put that right there beside that.
No, we've got our tables that are going to go back on there and everything else. I've noted those. I'm just looking for something else. Yes, sir. Please.
I anticipated the vote on the change on the meeting time. I'm announcing that I'm withdrawing from the board. It'll be effective the end of this month. If I can't be at the meetings, it's not fair to my precinct to not have representation. According to our bylaws, the county commissioners will name my replacement. I spoke to the county judge, John Paul, very recently, again, in anticipation of the meeting staying the way it is. he said that what he would probably do is ask the board for a recommendation for my replacement. So the board needs to be thinking about that. I don't know whether that's an agenda item or not. But John Paul is looking for a recommendation from the board as to a replacement for precinct 2 on the board. Thank everybody for the support over time. And
Question, I know it's out of order, but is there any reason you couldn't sue then? We were gonna have him sue. Is there any reason you can't do that?
it's not going to work. So, but thank you for the thought. Anyway, but the board needs to think about a replacement because John Paul said that the commissioners would look for recommendation and not as opposed to coming up with one on their own. So, thank you, thank everybody. I would say I've enjoyed it, but that's probably that's probably not totally true. But at least I've gotten to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have met previously. And Greg, I especially enjoyed working with you. You know, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anything else?
I think so.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I moved it with.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We adjourn.